listening to ProveText, a Glossa House podcast by Dr. T. Michael W. Halcomb, Dr. Fredrick J. Long, Dr. Mario Melendez, Dr. Jennifer Noonan, and J. M. Smith. Welcome and enjoy.
Hello and welcome to ProveText. I'm Michael Halcomb and I am here with Fred Long, and we are going to continue our discussion. It's a long-running discussion we've been having. About a year and a half, 2 years, Fred? About Galatians.
Discussion. I think it's more of a debate. Long-standing debate. No, just kidding. We've been talking about the text, translating it, but it's been a long time.
Yeah. Well, it's good to debate some of these things. You doing all right?
I am. I know I'm doing about as well as you, I think, in many ways. Really frenetic with our getting books ready for the annual meetings, Society of Biblical Literature, Institute for Biblical Research, ETS conferences that are going to be in San Antonio. Yeah, so we've been working, you've been publishing books and also getting books into print. And I've been doing the same typesetting, editing, cover creating. Pretty exciting. I mean, the quantity, the level of research, the level of books, the quantity of it, pretty exciting. Yep. So I know we've been busy.
Yeah, I feel like it feels like this time, like in this season right now, Glossa House is kind of turned a little bit of a corner, maybe. And we've been doing good stuff for 12 years now, but this most recent like spate of resources we've put out, it seems we've turned a corner, and we're firing on all cylinders. It seems like we've got illustrated Greek and really Hebrew volumes right now, but also some illustrated Greek that are not in our like illustrated text series. But I've been doing some children's like tier 1 or beginners resources, probably a better way to say it, and a lot of those have artwork. And then we've got the statistical Greek New Testament, we got the New Testament Peshitta, just lots of like the readers you've been working on, Enoch and Ben Sira. So lots of like really scholarly stuff as well. So we're like across the board, right? Like from beginner all the way to expert.
Yeah. 1 Corinthians, beginning, intermediate reader, Testaments of the Patriarchs, 12 Patriarchs, reader, advanced reader. So 3 new advanced readers out, and then killer. So it's great. I love helping people get published. We're about to come out with Travis West's dissertation that should hopefully be ready. And and you've been working on these young reader or introductory texts, and just different ramp ways to ease people into the biblical languages. So variety of resources. I mean, I think we had a goal of 24 books in print, and it was kind of slow to start, but I think we've met that already, and we still have another couple months yet. So pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think back in the day when we started this, I don't know, over a decade ago, that's when we were dreaming up this sort of Greek curriculum suite, and I would have never thought it would have taken this long to like really start filling that out. But it's taken a long time, and a lot of the resources we never really even maybe envisioned, but they've just happened. People have joined us.
Well, I mean, the thing is I've got books that I want to write. I have not been able to get to them because I'm helping other people get published, and I think if and you the same way, if we set aside that time just to do that, I think we would have a fuller curriculum out. You've been able to get your materials out and fill that out more than I have. You've been publishing the Psalms books and these Greek different picture books. And the prayer books, the Psalms and the prayer books. So kind of got the spiritual formation kind of spiritual formation books out.
Yeah.
But
That stuff though flows right out of just my everyday work, so I'm able
yeah,
to sort of double up, and I've always worked that way, that even when I was in master's degrees or the PhD, making sure, like, if I was doing something for a class, that it would be used at a conference or go into publication, or
yeah,
something like that. And the same thing, like, I'm writing all these sermons. Eventually, I hope to publish those, but I'm also writing a commentary as I do my sermon prep, and
yeah,
that'll come out at some point. And so, always trying to double up and make sure what I'm working on, uh, you know, will go beyond just, like, you know, using a sermon for one Sunday and then it never sees the light of day again, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. I
Or
think
presenting a paper at a conference, like. So
yeah,
hopefully, I'd love to even publish my conference papers, a collection at some point. But
hmm
uh, and
well,
even
good
like
job.
you, I'm sitting on 4, 5, 6, 7 books that are in draft mode, and
hmm
haven't had the capacity to get back around to them. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well, Godspeed to us as we conceptualize that, and congrats on your success in terms of getting some of these resources out. And yeah, it's exciting
yeah,
times.
yeah. You
Exciting
too.
times.
And we're always bringing more people on now, like, to help, which is kind of fun to see. Uh, it's a little challenging trying to manage people while trying to manage all the projects. You
hmm
know, so we're learning those sort of ropes too. But
hmm
it's fun to have other people who are just really into House and what we're doing, and uh, yeah, it's kind of neat. So yeah.
It is. Well, I suppose we should probably get to the Greek text. So thanks for listening and indulging and allowing us to indulge in what we've been doing and what we're pursuing here with Glossa House generally. But we're going to turn to Galatians 5, and we're going to finish up chapter 5 today. We're going to do 3 verses, believe it or not. At least that's our plan at this point in the
Probably end up
episode as we're
in one.
reporting. So why don't you get us started by continue by reading what you have
Yeah.
there.
So we're 24, 25, and 26 today. Galatians 5:24 in Greek is do I need to increase the font? Let me do that for people who might be watching rather than just listening. Be easier to read. There we go. So verse 24 says, "Είδε του Χριστού την σάρκα, σταύρωσαν σύντους παθέμασιν και τες επιθυμίες." Yep. And I don't really have anything to say in terms of pronunciation at this point. Oh, I do have one thing. With the Omicron Upsilon, remember that's pronounced differently than with Alpha Upsilon. So we do Alpha Upsilon as Av and Omicron Upsilon as U. The same thing if this were to be like an Epsilon Upsilon, it'd be Ev. Eta Upsilon, Ave. So my point is that the Omicron Upsilon's like the odd one out when it comes to vowel pairs. It's the one that doesn't go ov. So you have
Mm-hmm.
Ev, Ave, Av, Ev, Ave. This one doesn't go ov. It's just oo. Yep. So it's
Okay.
important to pay attention to.
Yeah. So you see the connector there, marking new or distinctive development. Moreover, what's just happened is that there's been a listing of vices and then virtues,
Mm-hmm.
and so this verse 24 is adding something distinctive, and I think, logically, I think it's kind of explaining how it is that we can bear fruit. We bear fruit. So the ones tu Christu Jesu, there's a textual variant there. The ones of Christ crucified, ev stavrosan, they crucified, aorist third plural, they crucified what? Tain sarka, the flesh. And then what's concomitant with the flesh? You have suntis pathemasin ketes epithumias, with the passions and desires. So the soon is attaching with the flesh, the sarx, tain sarka. So that's a third declension noun, feminine, sarx. Now, what's interesting about this is this verse really recalls back Galatians 2:20. I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but the life I live in the flesh. Now, sometimes the translations will say body, but if you go back to 2:20, he's really talking about the flesh, living in the flesh. So we're never able to be removed from the flesh or the body, but yet we have to continue to live in this body, and there's need. We have need to crucify the flesh. Now, the flesh is construing us as humans in terms of our bodiliness, independent of God. So flesh kind of taking it in a negative sense, not flesh as meaning physical, as if the physical were automatically bad, but flesh as we find ourselves in rebellion to God. So flesh can be both neutral and construing us in rebellion to God. And I think here, so we can live, Paul can talk about living in the flesh, living in the body, but we have to, that what's needed as we do that is there's a crucifixion needed. There's a denial of self that's needed, taking up of the cross that's needed, and following after Christ that is needed. And so flesh at its worst means living independent of God, left to our own self-referentiality, our own bodiliness. And for a lot of people, that's where they are. There's a ceiling. They don't have any transcendent perspective or worldview. And really, this body is a gift of God. Like, this is God given. It is good. But when that body and when our understanding of that body is independent of a perspective of God, there's a ceiling in our understanding, and we're left turned in on ourselves, then that flesh is bad, because it's not properly understood in relation to God. And so once we have that flesh in relation to God, we understand that there's sin residing in us somehow. Sinfulness, waywardness, rebellion against God is somehow in our bodily members. And so a response that we need to have towards this physical self that we embody is crucifixion. And particularly with regard to where that sin is manifest and felt in us, in our passions and in our desires. So the pathemata, and epithumi, s in the plural, epithumi, e in the plural. These are places where we need to be particularly vigilant to deny ourselves, particularly to deny ourselves. Now, epithumia, desire, is not is certainly redeemable. There are positive uses of this term. So it's not like we just say all desires are bad. And there are certain religious philosophies, I think Buddhism and other related kind of philosophies, religious lifestyles that deny all passions. They deny all desires as if that's the goal. Well, the thing is, that's not the goal. We can have those desires, and those desires can be sanctified. I would say that those desires need to be sanctified, not simply just denied, stuffed, and not allowed to exist at all. So
Yeah, I don't think
we
it's
need to be
possible.
careful what we mean by crucifying the flesh with its passions and desires. Jesus says, I long to have this fellowship with you in the kingdom of God. And that's, when he's giving the Last Supper and saying, this is my body, this is my blood, he's using this verb, I long to have this. And there are other instances where this word for epithumia, this word for desire, is positive. So those are some of my thoughts that I'm seeing here, that in regard to how to understand this verse. First, I would take it back to Galatians 2:20, where Paul lays himself as an example for them of co-crucifying himself, or being crucified with Christ, but yet then still living in this flesh and living by faith in Jesus, allegiance to Jesus. So that's how I'd understand these verses.
Yeah, I think it's less. It talks about talking about crucifying the desires, right? But I've talked about this before, and actually not too long ago in these Galatians episodes, where I think um, when we talk about desire, right, one, we have to be careful not to conflate that with temptation or habit, because desire and
Mm-hmm.
temptation are three different things. But the other thing is that um, desire, I agree, is not bad in and of itself, like inherently. And I think the
Mm-hmm.
way that we determine whether a desire is good or bad, or even better, holy or unholy, is by its end, right? And again, I've said this before, so I apologize. It sounds like a broken record, kind of, but we determine whether a desire is holy or unholy by its end, what its end goal is. And I think I used maybe the example before of like shaving my head, right? Um, we can determine whether that's good or bad, holy or unholy, based on why I'm doing it. Right? If I'm shaving my head to give my hair to cancer patients, um, then that maybe is a good and a holy thing. But if I'm shaving my head to mark myself as a white supremacist, right, that's a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're able to determine one's desire by its end goal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's really, really important. So um, when when we're having these desires, we need to check ourselves. Paul talks about taking every thought captive. I think that's very similar to this crucifying language here, taking captive and crucifying.
Mm.
Maybe there's a process there. I don't know, but you maybe first take it captive and discern whether it needs crucifying or not. And if it does, then crucify it. And if it doesn't, don't. Um, so I think that's important. I think people get confused about these kinds of things. So is the
Mhm.
desire to do A, B, or C bad or unholy? Well, it depends on what the end goal is.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by the fact that you have an aorist indicative. You know, um, they've crucified the flesh. It's almost like there was an initial battle or a decision, like this is the need. Deny yourself, be taking up your cross and following me. Like I'd like to go back and look at the verbal aspect of that. I'm thinking in terms of the process of formation. So as an aorist, you tend to think, aorist indicative in particular, I tend to think of viewed as a whole, as complete,
Yeah.
as but not construing how long it might take, just the fact that it needs to occur. That's so I'm wondering what that looks like. And so I'm curious to go back to Matthew 16:17, right around there, where it's verse 24. If anyone wishes to come after me, he must let him deny himself, which is aorist. Let him take up his cross, aorist. And then it's interesting, and let him be following me, present tense. So the first two are just kind of viewed as a whole. It needs simply to happen. But then the continual need is the focus on following after Jesus. Be following after me. So yeah, I'm just kind of wondering what the aorist indicative mood means in this context.
So I like to poke and prod and like play with the text a lot, just very imaginatively and creatively. And you sometimes have a way of reeling that back in. So let's just imagine for
Okay.
a minute, and you can argue with me grammatically or whatever, syntactically, however you want to do it contextually. What if we just imagined, just for a moment, just play here for a second, that the plural article here, you, is not to be translated referring to people, but as all the things that were just listed. So, while those things are of Christ, they crucify the flesh with its passions and desires. In other words, all those things that were just in the list. So, you can try to blow that out of the water if you like. I know that 22 begins with okarpos and that's singular, but we don't yet have everything listed off. So yeah.
Well, I mean, at the end of verse 23, you have the kataton, tiuton. There you have, against such things as these. But I'm presuming that is going to be neuter in gender. So against such things as these, there is no law. Moreover, let's say it was these things of Christ crucified the flesh. So it'd be the virtues.
Yeah.
The virtues crucified the flesh.
Yeah, the fleshly desires and passions.
Yeah.
So when you have those virtues within you, that they are agents that go about crucifying all of the rotten fruit, the rotten passions and desires.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the one correlation I could make would be just that you have, in Roman religion, you have personification of virtues that are depicted as goddesses. The goddess Pax, the goddess Fides, the goddess Spes. So, but I don't think that that's happening here, but I'm helping you, you're reading. But,
that's funny.
yeah, but I mean,
that's interesting contextually. I mean, that's a very interesting social point.
Well, I mean, the thing is, if you look at the most recent reference to a potentially plural masculine thing, it would be the tone, tu tone.
Mm-hmm.
But those things are they're all feminine in gender. Agape, kara, erenein, makrothumia, Christotes, agathosune, pistis, prautes, and kratea. They're all feminine. Against such things as these. So I think that could be feminine. I mean, the tone, tone, we don't know what gender it is. That's the universal genitive plural ending. So I would say that if the ud there is referring to them, it would have been feminine.
Alpha Iota.
Yeah, Alpha
Yeah,
Iota.
mm,
Yeah.
it's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Yeah, but interesting thought experiment. Yeah.
let's
Go
let's
on to verse 25 and 26. Why don't you go ahead and read those together?
yeah. Izomen pnevmati ke stichomen, me inometha kenodoxiu, alelius procalumenu, alelius thonundes. And there's some tricky stuff going on there. You have the phi theta. That's always a little tricky for some people to pronounce. Because we don't really do that in English, right? Um, you have you have the yinometha. Remember that gamma in the environment of being followed by iota is a yi becomes a y sound, so it's yinometha. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll
Yeah.
stop there.
Yeah. So verse 25. So what's interesting about each of these two verses, 25 and 26, is they're ascendaton. So there's no connector. And I'm just kind of puzzling on that. I'm wondering what's motivating that. 25 has the feel of a gnomic statement, of a aphorism or a proverb, a maxim. So if we are living by the Spirit, let us be conducting ourselves also by the Spirit. And that's a nice chiastic arrangement there, right? So you got the zomen, then the pnevmati, and then stikomen. So you have verb, pnevmati, verb.
Mm-hmm.
And moreover, the verbs are both verbs of living in a sense. Stikomen, this is also, it can mean like conform, follow. Earlier in Galatians,
Also
remember he
have
was
the
talking
idea
about
of
how you
like,
used to conform to the elemental things of this
well, that's
world.
what I was
It's
gonna say.
the,
This
the
has to
cogni,
do with, yeah, exactly. This also can do
stoichia,
with adherence to elementary
yeah,
principles.
stichia, right? The
Mm-hmm.
stichia. Yeah. So we're seeing a lot of backward references in the discourse, which we're preparing for this. Yeah. So by the Spirit really is the linchpin, I think, in the Christian life. Without the Spirit, we couldn't do it. And the Spirit provides conviction of sin. I think the Spirit provides a constant presence, affirming us as children of God, which can kind of undergird us, support us. So the Spirit, obviously is power, the power of God, but it's more than just power. It's like the personal presence of God. So yeah, it's by this
It's
Spirit.
what makes it's what so I would want to translate this something like in a general sense of like, if we're living by the Spirit, um let our something like that, let our basic principles also be in the Spirit, or of the Spirit, by the Spirit.
Mm,
uh, and so that the stuchomen, the stuhu here are actually referring back to the fruit of the Spirit. Like those are the basics. Like that's the foundation. If we're living by the Spirit, then the Spirit should be like our basic principles should be what he just said, the fruit of the Spirit.
yeah, yeah. It means like to be in line with. I'm
Yeah,
seeing that in LSJ, Brildag, walk in a line, move in a line, walk. So there's a correspondence, agree with,
because
conform to. Yeah,
he just called these the fruit of the Spirit,
yeah.
right? So these are, I think these are the elemental principles of the Spirit, and thus the
Mm,
Spirit led life, living in the
yeah,
Spirit life.
yeah, yeah. Elemental principles of the Spirit. Very good.
And
Yeah, the
so
core.
we don't have a choice of like, oh, I'm going to pick this one.
No.
Remember, it's singular, the fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah,
This is like the elemental things that that should be guiding the life of every believer.
Yes. Yeah, this is a great verse to memorize. If you've not memorized this verse in English, you should memorize it. 22, Galatians 6:22 or 5:22. Yeah, the fruit of the Spirit is, and just meditate on these kinds of things, and then probably do some word studies on those words. You know, what do those words mean? What does it mean to be long suffering or patient? What does it mean to be kind? What does it mean to be good and meek? And what does it mean to have self-control? But yeah, these are evidences that the Spirit is working in our lives. Yeah, and like Michael said, we can't just pick and choose. What kind of condition is this? We have E with the present indicative, followed by a present subjunctive in a hortatory. Let us be lining up with. And I would say that that's equivalent to present simple. Present simple. So if in fact in the present we are this way, in the present we should line up with that Spirit. So it's either a simple, I call it a simple present, which is kind of talking about our present reality. Like this is what it is. This is I'd say this is a default present tense condition, but it's clearly in our present framework of who we are. I mean, it's a bald statement of fact with an urging, in this now moment, like there needs to be an alignment. And again, I think it's interesting that when it comes to denial of the self, being crucifying the flesh, whatever, that's all aorist tense indicative. It may be that those things are repeatedly done over time, but we're not given that as a fallback or as like it needs to be that way. It needs to be understood as occurring over time. It's interesting that it's just said it's done. Like you crucified the flesh, period. Like get it over with. Put off the old self, Paul says in Ephesians 4:22. Be renewed in the spirit of your mind, present tense. So it's interesting, to pay attention to what is aorist, viewed as a whole, get it done with. We don't get to play around and say, I want to take my time on this. This needs to take time. It doesn't need to. But then I think then more importantly for me in my own growth in the spiritual life is not to keep focusing on those old things and the struggle there. That's not when I grow. I grow the most and the best when I set those things aside and I'm just trying to do what Christ wants me to do. Yeah. Keep my eyes focused on that goal.
Sounds like you're talking about sanctification. I mean, entire sanctification. Too. And as well as, I guess, progressive. But, I don't know if our listeners, how many of them have maybe parsed out views of sanctification, but I think it's a really important thing to have some kind of understanding of entire sanctification versus progressive sanctification versus glorification. I find that often what happens is progressive or entire sanctification is often mistaken for and confused with glorification. In my own thought process, and I think I'm following John Wesley's sort of layout here, perhaps Paul's layout here, is that entire sanctification, right, precedes progressive sanctification. And entire sanctification is the eradication, if you will, of the sin nature, and it's been crucified, it's done. And now we move on to progressive sanctification, which culminates in glorification.
Yeah. I think we give way too much power to the sin nature. In fact, I don't even think it's a nature. Like it is foreign to us. Sinning is not natural to human beings. Like it grates against our souls. It is not a natural state of being. That's why when people are engaging in it, it's never satisfying. It hollows them out as persons, and they physically just look like corpses sometimes. It's devastating to the human psyche. Sin is just not at all natural. And so we need to just reconceive of what it is. It's a parasite. It is completely unnatural to life. It sucks the life out of us. And great, which is stronger? Ask this question. Consider it. Which is stronger, human sin or God's grace? Just keep thinking about that. To me, it's not even close. And yet somehow we give so much strength to sin, and it's just, it pales in comparison to God.
It's the same thing. That though, if you run it to its logical conclusion, ends up resulting in people putting God and Satan on the same level. And I see it so often in the church. People have this view that there's like God and Satan are on the same level battling. Well, no, they're not. Satan's locked up. God's like running the show, right? And people act as if Satan is omniscient, like, oh, he can know my thoughts. Well, not if you haven't given him access. People act as if Satan is omnipresent. Well, no, he's not.
No, he's not.
Locked up. He's got minions everywhere, but he's locked up. People act as if he's omnipotent. That's just a mirage. He's not omnipotent. Evil is rampant, but he is not omnipotent. So that's the thing. I think when you have that view of sin that you were talking about, and you run it to its logical conclusion, you see people essentially equating God with, putting God and Satan on the same level. And what that does in turn is result in a very shallow theology of God or understanding of God.
Yeah. And the resources that he's made available to us and the resources that we have. Yeah.
Well,
I don't think we should do the next verse. No? I don't think we should do the next verse. Yeah. I think we've spent our time. I think it'll go well with 6:1. I mean, we gave it a good shot. I think we just need to slow it down a little bit. And so we'll do 5. We'll finish chapter 5 in the next episode, and we'll go on to 6:1. And I think they kind of go together. But 6:1 is a long verse, so we'll have to be efficient. But anyway,
you got a parting shot?
Oh yeah, I guess so. Nothing can come of nothing. Nothing can come of nothing. Sin is nothingness. So nothing can come of it. God's going to win. That's a quote from Shakespeare. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's end there. And thank you all for listening. We don't ask much on the podcast, but if you're willing to subscribe, we invite you to do that and hit the like button, and even better, share this with folks. Thanks to everybody who's been commenting lately. The comments are really picking up, and we appreciate that. I love hearing from you folks and your questions and inputs. Try to keep it respectful and those sorts of things, cordial and collegial. Yeah, so we'll end here. Thanks, Fred, for your insights, and thanks to all of you. Until next time, aloha.
See ya.
Interested in growing your ancient language skills but not sure where to start? Glossa House can help. From illustrated readers and short stories to lexicons and grammars, Glossa House offers a variety of resources for beginning, intermediate, and experienced ancient language learners. Head to glossahouse.com today. Glossa House, language resources for the global community.